Hello, folks. Charlie Gipple here with CG Financial Group. Today, we're going to have a little bit of a shift in focus. Today, we're going to talk about whole life insurance dividends. What are whole life insurance dividends? How are they calculated? And does the dividend rate matter? So here is the final slide in my presentation. I'm starting from the back and then I'm going to work forward here because the first thing that I hear all the time is, what is the dividend rate on XYZ's policy? By the way, before I go there, here's a reminder. If you like my content, feel free to share it and like it. Make sure your friends get educated on this stuff as well. I was recently reminded that I do not tell people to like and share my content as much as I should. So there we have it. Anyway, the dividend, what it is it is made up of two different things. The first thing is the insurance, the red here, right? The insurance company paying back the consumers what they overcharged those consumers. The second part of the dividend is the insurance company paying the consumers above and beyond what they guaranteed as far as an interest rate. So in other words, if a carrier guarantees a client on the guaranteed side of the illustration, the guaranteed ledger in the illustration, if that carrier guarantees a client 4% every single year, but yet in a given year, the carrier actually experiences, say, a 5% yield within their general account, then that carrier is going to pay back that consumer that additional 1%, right? So when you take the two of those together, a refunding of the overcharge, which is the red, the blue, which is truing up what the insurance carrier actually got from an investment yield standpoint, that is what makes up the dividend. If you notice here, in this hypothetical example that I put together here, I kind of did some reverse engineering. This particular policy only has 40% or so of its total dividend coming from, well, the 5% versus 6% versus 7% versus 8% dividend. So in short, many carriers say we don't publish our dividend rate. Why? Because it does not matter. You know, if I were to create a company today, and if I wanted to, lead people on to that we're paying huge amounts of dividends, what I would do is basically just reduce the red here, overcharge clients, in other words. But what I would do is increase the blue, and what I could do is I could pay out the same dividend, but yet tell consumers that I'm paying a 10% dividend rate on my policies. Of course, I would never do that. I'm just making a point here that the total dividend is what matters, not necessarily the dividend rate. Now we're going to go into the mechanics here in a bit, but I want you to read those two paragraphs. The dividend is merely the excess growth in cash value above what the guaranteed cash value was, well, guaranteed to grow by, right? It's the excess. Now, the dividend rate is merely a component, one of the two components of the total dividend, and thus the total growth in the policy. So again, that dividend rate, the significance of that is only really to the tune of, 40% of our total dividend here. So in short, if that red box is really small, it doesn't matter how big, how shiny of an object that dividend rate is, right? So let's back up. Again, I started from the back end of my presentation and going backwards. Why? Because I wanted to mention the dividend rate thing first. So here is what I did. The next slide here that I just passed through is put out by a carrier. They're a great carrier with great products, but they showed you how the dividends are calculated. But what I did is I reverse engineered basically a starting point. And that starting point, hypothetical starting point here, is basically the guaranteed ledger. So on every illustration with whole life insurance, you have two different ledgers. You have the guaranteed ledger and you have the non-guaranteed ledger. The guaranteed ledger shows the client's money going in, and then you have debits and credits that are coming out or being credited, right? What are the debits from that $75,000 in this example? The debits are very conservatively high cost of insurance charges and administrative charges, right? The insurance company, they need to keep their lights on. Those are admin charges. The insurance company has to charge for mortality, right? Those charges are astronomically high. They're conservatively high. As a matter of fact, the cost of insurance charges are based off of the highest the insurance company can charge, based off the 2017 CSO mortality table, right? to where like universal life insurance, they'll charge year by year, heck, can be like 50% of what that mortality table allows for. But I'm not saying whole life is bad because the insurance company refunds it later. We'll get to that here in a bit. But anyway, so you have the debits coming out of that $75,000. And think, again, guaranteed ledger, guaranteed ledger. Those debits coming out of that guaranteed ledger are maximum conservative charges, right? But then the second thing is the credits, the conservatively low guaranteed interest rate that particular policy is guaranteeing. All this stuff has to be conservative, right? Because if you're a 20-year-old taking out a policy, holding it to maturity, this is a 100-year liability. These charges have to be conservative. But that's okay because the insurance company has the right, and usually does at the end of the year, to credit back basically what they owe the consumers based off real experience, which is where that non-guaranteed ledger comes into play. The difference between the guaranteed ledger and the non-guaranteed ledger is dividends. And dividends are made up of two different things, as we just talked about, right? First of all, a refund of the overcharging, a refund of those debits, right, that were overcharged. And the second thing is truing up to what the actual investment experience was of the company. So let's go into the real case study here. $75,922 at the beginning of the year. Well, the client, they pay their premium, right? So that means that the actual on the guaranteed ledger at the beginning of the year, it would show a value of $77,501. But then what the insurance company does as well, but over that course of a year, what's going to happen is, again, the debits as well as credits, right? We're going to charge you the maximum that we can. We're going to charge you the maximum that we can, which is $1,591 based off this client's max mortality charges, the insurance company's max admin charges. So that leaves a balance there after the $1,591 is taken out of the $77,501 of $75,910. But again, we're going to credit you a very conservative. We're going to guarantee you that you will get at least a 4% credit on top of a 4% credit. Let me do the math here. 30375 by 0.04. Yeah, on top of your $75,910. There's some rounding stuff that goes into this. On top of your $75,910, we're going to credit you 4%, which means $3,037. Right? So that means that the end of the year, from a guaranteed standpoint, your end of year, based off all these guarantees, your cash value is going to be $78,947. Okay, so how has the actual experience been from a dividend standpoint, from a true experience, mortality experience standpoint, true earnings standpoint? How did this insurance company actually do relative to those guaranteed rates? Well, this is where the dividends come in, right? So here at the top, oh, by the way, if you notice those two values there, even though there was a 4% guaranteed interest rate, imagine if you were an agent and told that client that they were guaranteed 4% compounded tax-free on their money as time goes by. And I'm not disparaging whole life. I love whole life. I'm not disparaging IUL. I love IUL, but it's the same thing with IUL. Even though 4% was the interest credit, it was not the effective interest credit. As a matter of fact, the difference between the top and the bottom is only 1.87%. Not saying the 1.87% is bad. That's not the point of this. The point is just because it's 4% doesn't mean that it's actually growing by 4%. Common sense, right? There are expenses within life insurance that make it less than that. So now let's go on to the truing up process that this company had done. So this is a piece put out by a company, and what I just did with the previous slide was reverse engineered to the guaranteed ledger. So what the company said is okay, here is what actually happened with a policy like this. You know, again, you have the 1579 going in, so you have the 77,501. It's the same thing, right? But the first part of the dividend, first part of the dividend is the fact that we don't need to charge the clients what we actually charged them, which was $1,591. No, our true mortality, because we underwrote everything perfectly and all that, we only should have charged them $377, right? And that gives us a balance of $77,124. But then when you get the second part of that dividend, which is, wow, our true investment experience was not 4%, it was actually 5%, which means instead of crediting that client $3,037, we're going to give them an extra, $800 and some dollars, if you remember my little bar chart slide earlier. We're going to give them $3,856 instead of just, the rate that was, 4%. That means that at the end of the year, based off our actual experience, the client should have a value of $80,980 instead of $78,947, i.e. a dividend of $2,033. Now, by the way, to point out a point here again, even though that dividend rate was 5%, notice that the policy value, it only grew by 4.49%, right? Which tax-free, that's pretty darn good, but that's not the point. The point is 5% compounded forever. That's what you get, Mrs. Client, on your cash value. That's not true, whether we're talking whole life or IUL for that matter. So the difference between the guaranteed ledger that we talked about, which was $78,947 here at the bottom, right? And our $80,980 is $2,033. And thus, our little bar chart here that shows, well, 40% of that dividend for the year was made up of, the extra credit that the insurance company gave the client because they had more favorable experience with their investments than just 4%. But 60% or so is the actual overcharging and refunding back of that overcharging to the client. That, folks, is how dividends work on whole life insurance. Let me know if you have any questions. And remember, if you like this, feel free to click like as well as share it with your friends. Charlie Gipple here, CG Financial Group, an independent marketing organization helping agents with life insurance, long-term care, and annuities. Have a good day.